I think of myself as an introvert. I mean, I've always been introverted, so I've always thought, oh,
Welcome to Happiness and the City. This is Barbara, and today I'd like to start talking about internet as an organization because it is a very important topic, and as some of you know, it's very connected to my heart. So let's look at Wikipedia article. I recommend that you read it. It's a long article, but it's so well written and it's very informative. And I encourage you to support Wikipedia because their work is just amazing. So here we have a definition of what internet is, because definitions are very important, and some people don't really understand the complexity of internet, and therefore have difficulties appreciating it and appreciating the miraculous gift that God gave this generation of people on earth. So let's look at this article. The internet, contraction of interconnected network, is the global system of interconnected computer networks that use the internet protocol suite TCP/IP to link devices worldwide. So right here we have a very clear definition that explains to you what internet abbreviation is. Interconnected network. Internet. Interconnected network would be too long, so it is abbreviation internet. So it's interconnected network. And we have to look at the power of it, because if the network is interconnected, it means everybody should participate in it. By definition, internet is about connection. So what it is not disconnected network, it's interconnected network. And the participants are computer networks that use the internet protocol suite to link devices worldwide. So it is a global system of interconnected computer networks. Now, we have to understand the core meaning of this definition, because it is invention that is very different from what used to be in the past. In the past, we had very limited systems of communication and very limited technology to connect. So people got used to dealing with disconnection as a way of life. And that created a lot of fear in the world, because people had no way to get to know their neighbors. They had no technological ability to communicate worldwide. And that was one of the reasons so many wars were created, because a lot of the distrust was so ingrained in cultures of many countries of the earth that the only response they had to threat was through attack, a preemptive attack, and that created response of violence and warlike outcomes, or wars as outcomes. Cold War was not direct attack, but it was response to lack of trust and lack of communications, because countries who were opponents in the war, they mistrusted each other, and the only way they could connect is by sneaking into each other's territory and to get information from very restricted, limited circles. Internet is a completely new way of communicating, because the purpose is not to create boundaries, but the purpose is to create connections that would allow diverse people to be in contact with each other and to have a situation in which they can avoid conflicts that would end up in hostile boundaries. I'm not talking here about boundaries of natural law, like family boundaries or clan boundaries, country boundaries. Those are physical boundaries that need to be respected as well, because they are connected to the commandment that God gave us: honor your mother and your father. So I have to honor my mother and my father. You honor your mother and your father. And that is natural boundary of life and development of life. So when internet comes in, it doesn't get rid of it. It adds to it. It allows diverse people from diverse backgrounds to connect without disturbance in their personal identity and in their family, cultural, national linguistic identity. The example is all languages are on internet. You don't have to have just one language replacing every other language, because that would create conflict and wars. There is an interconnected system that allows all languages to be there. And people can communicate throughout all languages. There are even translation apps, and the whole mankind got connected in ways that no other generation ever was capable of. So at the very foundation of internet's nature is capability, knowledge, and capacity to create worldwide peace. So we have to understand that this is technology that allows us to get to know each other, allows us to create personal connections that would have been unthinkable before. I get on many live streams and I talk to people from many countries. That would have been impossible without internet. And then I noticed that at first people are very timid with each other, almost restrained in fear, and then they start getting to know each other, overcome it, create new connections, and this wonderful global friendship is being developed that we have to learn how to handle. It is a new phenomenon, and we need to adjust to it and shape it in ways that would continue this wonderful internet connectivity that created life experience for current generation that is simply magnificent. So we have to understand that it has been taken now almost 60 years to develop internet. Internet started development in late 50s, and then throughout 60s, 70s, and 80s was developing knowledge and technology. It was very powerfully strengthened in France in the 80s, and then the 90s is the time when internet became so deeply grounded that it was time to connect it to commercial life. Internet first started as a military idea and then continued developing until people who were part of the development of internet realized that it has tremendous commercial applications, and the idea of commercial connectivity is so loved that it created worldwide trade. And today we have a situation in which there is a conflict between old ideas of trade that are based on that very limited communication, very reinforced boundaries, versus this new way of communicating in commerce that has opened up internal corridors of communication that created new dimensions and new forms of trade. So the old ways of trade and the new ways of trade are now a little bit in competition, but the new ways of trade, including internet networks of commercial communications, are so powerful and so loved that the old way simply is just fading away. And we have to understand that, because there is some conflict today around tariffs, around the so-called intellectual property, but those are old-fashioned ideas if they are applied to without the new culture, new technology, and new ways of disseminating information that internet created. There is a certain way to have copyright defense, to have certain information that is classified, shielded on internet. But internet created new knowledge and new information that old information had no idea could be created. So to apply the old copyright ways to this new technology is inappropriate. We have to develop ways to monetize that freedom that we have today, but not to hijack it from that magnificent internet to ways of past generations. And I encourage you to think about the peaceful measures to be created without that very painful conflict that wants to impose those old ways of tariffs and old ways of penalties and limiting knowledge to this wonderful, miraculous technology that wants to connect and wants to create new ways of making money that do not have to be based on restrictions, but on creativity and value that is very different from what former generations had. So this is the challenge for us. So I encourage you to be very creative in this area, in the spirit of love and in the spirit of power, in the spirit of sound mind that God has given us so that we don't have to build walls, but we will instead create connections of trust that make those walls unnecessary, irrelevant. So that's what I encourage all of us connected to internet to do. And I believe that the current generation of people on earth, especially those who grew up with internet, can appreciate that right to liberty that internet creates to the whole world. I have been looking at some of the comments around global communication, and most people appreciate, but some people are still in that old mode. They just want to cut those they disagree with, or remove them, or somehow punish them. But they don't understand that they are on internet because it allows everybody to be there. So the only thing that internet has to be shielded from is precisely those people who like to limit it, to go back to those old ways in which you were not interconnected with each other just the way you are, but to those old ways where people were cut off from each other, and they were treated with distrust and no capacity to connect. So this is a very different way of thinking, and many organizations haven't caught up to this, and they started attacking the opponents, but they don't understand, and then they undermine themselves because they undermine the very nature of interconnectivity. For instance, Facebook. Facebook is loved. Twitter is loved because they allowed hundreds of thousands of people, billions of people, to have access to this world speech, to that world connectivity. That's why those organizations became so rich, because people wanted to join in order to participate in that new, wonderful, beautiful way to connect. And from the margins come some people, and they wanted to attack this over some minor things, instead of trying to blend in and harmonize with this wonderful new way of communicating. They wanted to destroy it and go back to those old war ways, and then they say it's in the nature of peace to do this. No, that is not peace. If somebody wants to destroy loving affection of billions of people and God's will in it, that is not peaceful. That is very violent. And I know that internet has to be shielded from this. Internet, by definition, is interconnected network. People have to learn to stay connected, or to be in a situation in which they have access to that interconnectivity, because that creates priceless global connections that develop new ways for people to communicate and develop peaceful measures throughout the world that no other generation had. So we have internet, worldwide internet, as this wonderful antidote to what former generations had as world wars. This invention, this gift from God, internet, is to be an antidote to those old ways. So please, those of you who are tempted to apply those old, very war-like ways to internet, you should stop doing it. Enjoy the fact that you can connect to people in loving and wonderful way. Learn how to do it. Learn to be patient with your neighbors having different points of view. You may change your points of view if you start seeing facts and evidence that others provide, or you may clarify your own thinking better if you are in conversation with other people. But if you remove them like trash, then you are in danger also of being removed like trash by somebody stronger than you. So the former methods were the power ways in which people were pushing each other's presence to non-existence. Internet is opposing this. Internet is a place in which, in a very stable way, everybody has access to that connectivity, and all you need is a computer, mobile phone, and you are in the network. And then you create pathways to be there with everybody else who is there. And that's what Facebook and Twitter organizations are. They are there and people come to see other people there. There's nothing more peaceful in the history of mankind than that. I go on Twitter every day, I go on Facebook a lot, and I just check what other people are doing, and then I contribute myself. It's wonderful. And then I'm like typing something, and somebody comes in and wants to talk about how to get rid of somebody else, and that I know that is not right. That is the old way. The new way is to learn to be patient with each other. There's choice. You don't have to communicate with everybody. It's a network, so you choose with whom you communicate or with whom you don't communicate, but you accept all residents of internet as having right to be there. So I think that this way of thinking is the future, and that we will learn how to improve the quality of this interconnected network, and that we will also learn that it is this broad foundation for communication, and within it, of course, there are many other networks, because internet is network of networks. So when I'm saying that the network itself has to be shielded as this powerful marketplace, so to speak, it has substitute networks, and those networks constitute of private, public, academic, business, and government networks of local to global scope. I'm quoting from Wikipedia. And they are linked by a broad array of electronic, wireless, and optical networking technologies. So within the foundation of internet, there are other networks. And what you do within those networks is unique to those who participate in those networks. But I think that the wonderful nature of internet as this super network allows this to happen, and again, it created a shield for all those other networks to be there. There has never been anything like this in the history of mankind. So the future of security is to shield that liberty that is within internet, and to discourage those who try to create control over this, because control is the old way. It's the pre-internet way, and that old way of control was no good. It created wars, it created horrible things. Internet over the last 30 years created more good on earth than we could have ever imagined. And this is the future. There are families communicating with each other that in previous generations they would be disconnected. Once you leave that village, go to the city, you never talk back again to your family members, and then you just hear about your grandma passing away. Today, your grandma can go on Facebook and tell you about what her cats are doing, and you read it and you just enjoy in your heart the beauty and love of family connections. The same with friends. With governments, I'm so fascinated by it because I can check what all kinds of governments are doing. I tend to pray for the leaders, think about how to guide them to wisdom. It's wonderful. So thank you today for listening to my remarks, and we'll continue talking about it again.